Welcome to At Home at Highclere for Viking, and this is episode 12. Today I'm standing on the steps of the Orangery, flanked by some bay trees. It's a wonderful building, and I thought I'd share with you some of its treasures. In fact, it used to be attached to where the castle is when it was a Georgian house in the 18th century, and it was then moved when Sir Charles Barry remodelled the castle for the third Earl in 1842. Sir Charles Barry, if you remember, was also the architect for the Houses of Parliament. An extraordinary man. Anyway, he moved the Orangery down here. It faces south, it's attached to the Monk's Garden, and they rebuilt it. And since then, Geordie and I have also refurbished and restored it. And Geordie, my husband, was figuring out things that we could grow. How could we make it sustain itself and create some money? So we've got quite a few citrus plants in here. And then when we created Highclere Castle Gin, we were inspired by what we can grow inside the Orangery, by the lemons, by the oranges, by the citrus flavours, to create Highclere Castle Gin. So this is part of our gin story. And I know there's a great Viking pre and post cruise, which I think is called Great Gardens, Stately Homes and Gins, or something like that. I'm sure you can find it on their website. So it's all come together for Viking, and it certainly all came together for us in here. So you have to come and have a look. So here in the Orangery, you might be able to see some of the old original ironmongery, which we've repaired and we've reused as well as they did. And then the beds in the middle are full of geraniums, which are used in the castle. So when you come into the castle and visit us, there are flowers and plants in all the rooms, because they also truly make a home. And then there are some small lemons and orange trees. They're not yet, they don't obviously have any lemons or limes on them yet. And there's some orange trees over there. And this is what we use when we, again, are creating the gin. We pick them, we dry them, and then we send them to the distillery. Behind us are the lavender around the Monk's Garden. And then with that go the other ingredients that balance the gin. And the more I've learned about it, it's all about balance, which I think, funnily enough, is kind of where we are in the world today. It's how we create balance in our lives and for the balance of nature as well. But this is a really beautiful part of nature. We collect the geraniums every year, often from the Royal Horticultural Society in the great big May celebration in Royal Hospital in where I think Viking also have a garden, which they also share. And we tend to go around there, and we're actually buying quite a lot of the little plants. There's one over there which is a very dark red called Lord Bute, which my father-in-law and my husband really likes. It's such a rich colour. The leaves of many of the bigger geraniums are scented, so if you rub them between your fingers, they have the most amazing scent. You have to be careful, because some people are a little bit allergic to them, but it is a riot of colour, isn't it? It's magic. It really is. And this is one of the scented leaf geraniums, which is wonderful. And the amount of oranges and lemons on the tree are not huge, but they're so intense. They add that intense flavour to our gin. I hope you've tried the gin. I'm now going to take you into the fernery, very Victorian, just behind the Orangery. We've also repaired the fernery, which is north facing, and there's got the glass lean-to ceiling, which we spray with lime and water at this time of year, so it filters the strength of the light, and it means the gardeners actually have to do less watering, which is always a help on their time. They work so hard, they are so busy creating the delight and beauty in the gardens, as well as bringing the gardens through all the plants into the house. This is really behind the scenes in the gardens at Highclere. I love this part of it. These are some wonderful old coal frames. They are so useful. I'm always buying plants when they're quite small, because they're much less expensive, and then we grow them on in here before planting them out. So here I've got some Cornus midwinter fire, I think it is. It's got these extraordinary beautiful stems. So in autumn and in the autumn beds in the Wood of Goodwill, that's where I'll plant these, probably this October or something. So this is where they grow and then they're planted out. And then I forget I've got them, so it's rather a treat actually. There are some peonies, which I'm not quite sure why they haven't gone out of the distance, but very pretty, and irises beyond them. My husband loves irises. We're beginning to get a much bigger collection of different types of iris. So together we're expanding and creating much greater diversity in terms of types of each plant, as well as the range of plants we have here. And then behind, I'm actually looking at the most amazing wall. So some of this wall was here 1,000 years ago. Isn't that extraordinary? It was built from flint and brick, and the monks, the church, bishops of Winchester, who owned Highclere in the 11th and 12th century, used to grow apple and pear trees the other side of the wall, which faces south and is on gently sloping ground. You can see the old doorways filled in, new doorways made, where the wall's been repaired, and in the Georgian times made a little bit taller and higher. And then against it you've got again some more plums and pears and other fruit trees. I'm now standing in the vinery, which was another building that Geordie and I repaired, I can't remember when. This is a really nice hardwood, which I decided not to paint on the outside, because then otherwise the paint peels, so I've just varnished it. We've repaired the wall at the back, and in here are some of the larger ferns, small apricots, and we've gone back and we've planted some grapes. So they've got a long way to go yet to be ripe, but they're looking really good. It's only June after all, so hopefully in another month or two we'll have some lovely table grapes. It's a very useful space. As you can see, the ferns, which have clearly got completely enormous, have come back to be stored in here. I'm standing in another greenhouse, and again this goes back to the Victorian or maybe earlier. We had to almost completely rebuild it. But it's now looking wonderful with local craftsmen, great wood, and this is where we've got all the begonias, and all the begonias will go into the castle throughout the summer again to fill pots. We put 3 or 4 together, and the pots are just balanced on the shelf above. So I'm always buying the odd pot here and there, or matching pots for different rooms. They're quite hard to come across, so I'm always on the lookout for a myriad of different pastry things. Wonderful. Can you wait here for me? So welcome back inside the castle. Thank you for joining me again. And now the fun begins, because it's all about the gin. So I thought we'd come back and share with you some of the story of Highclere Castle Gin. I'm going to actually hold it against the light because it's such an amazing bottle, and I'm so proud of what we've achieved with our Highclere Castle Gin. It was, we just began to develop the business, and it was having such an amazing reception before, of course, the world slightly changed at the beginning of March, or it turns out slightly earlier. So Highclere Castle Gin began through the strangest of coincidences. My husband came down from a rather grubby office in which he was temporarily residing because we were doing up another office, and he said to me, "Darling, I've had an email from this man called Adam, and he's in the distilling business. He wants to see us about putting together an idea about gin and distilling, going into business." And we never turn anything down. It's how relationships begin. So we began to explore the idea together, Adam and Regina came over from Connecticut to the UK, to Heathrow and to Highclere. And it was quite an adventurous journey because Regina, Adam's marvellous wife, was driving, and perhaps driving on the other side of the road was somewhat challenging, but they made it. And we went and had lunch and supper at pubs together. We explored the area. We explored Highclere together, and we began to become friends. 4 years later, we were able then to launch Highclere Castle Gin. And it's been such a really interesting path of how you make a drink. It comes from the field, it comes from the garden. And you start with the gin and how strong it is. It started a little bit too strong and then went down to 43%, and all the botanicals in it, because that creates the balance and the harmony and the taste. And in fact, it's now won 7 gold awards. It's phenomenal. It's become one of the most awarded gins in the world, I hope. One of the key ingredients is what I've got here. It's juniper. Every gin has juniper. And actually, you can find juniper bushes on the foss of Beacon Hill, which is an old Iron Age fort. We can't collect it from there because it's a site of such special scientific interest, but we've planted juniper elsewhere within the gardens. There's actually 10 botanicals. Another key botanical is Angelica root. And Angelica, it has a slightly, I think, bitter smell. I love it, but it is slightly bitter. I've planted it in our healing herb garden because Angelica takes its name from St. Michael and All Angels, the archangel, and it also supposed to have medicinal properties. And next door to the castle, the church was called St. Michael and All Angels, so we had to have Angelica. These are some coriander seeds. And again, coriander is so good for us. I love the herbs that have grown here. We have a healing herb garden, and in it I'm trying to remember and share all the properties of all the herbs which we can introduce into our diet or into our gin. Around the monk's garden, I think you saw some of the lavender in a previous time with Viking on Fridays. This is dried lavender. And then, of course, from the oranges you saw, we dry the oranges and the lemons. So we don't have too much juniper. We pare back the juniper berries in the gin so that you don't have to counterbalance their quite strong taste with the lemon. So there's juniper, then there's citrus, there's lemon, and there's a little bit of orange. And the oil from an orange is wonderful. It really goes well with the gin. There's also lime flowers and cardamom. And one of the other most extraordinary, interesting ingredients we've added at the end are oats. Can you believe it? We've added oats to our gin, which was my husband's idea, because when we were tasting the gin neat, and we had to taste the gin for 9 months, let me tell you, and tasting the gin, it had a slight edge to it at the end when you were tasting it neat. And so Geordie and the distillery had an idea of adding some oats. So they put just a few oats, and it gives us this amazing creamy taste. So that's a completely unique collection of botanicals. But what it does is the balance and the time, and we've taken to put it together, give you a gin which is fantastic for martinis, it's fantastic for Negronis. It makes a wonderful gin and tonic, very refreshing. And we tend to often serve it with a sprig of rosemary, again from the healing herb garden. We can all grow rosemary. And it's supposed to be energizing. And of course the orange here, you can have lemon or lime as well. Plenty of ice and some tonic water, whichever tonic water suits you. So this is all the collection of the herbs. And then, having made the gin, we then had to find and decide how to present it to you all, how to market it, how to put it in what bottle. And this is, again, such a unique bottle. We've used the oldest distillery in England, and we've also used an amazing glass factory, and they've specially made us this blue bottle. It's a bluey purpley colour. It depends on how much gin. Clearly, I've drunk quite a lot of the gin, so there's only this much left, and the top part is lighter. And you've got the castle on it, obviously, and it's square like the castle tower. The pièce de résistance, which is Adam von Gutkin, our wonderful American partner's idea was to make the barcode the shape of the castle. Is that not cool? So it's really worth buying just for the barcode. There's stories all over it. And we wanted to choose the bluey purpley colour because Highclere was owned by the bishops of Winchester for 800 years. From 749 AD, when they were first gifted Highclere by the bishops of Winchester, until the time of Henry VIII and the dissolution of the monastery and church wealth. So the purpley blue colour is a nod back to that. And whether you're godly or not, for me, he is part of my life. So it's a spiritual journey in every way. So I can drink a spirit, and I'm hopefully having God on my side as well. So it's been such a fun, amazing journey. So you come from the orangery and the flowers and inside, and actually then comes the fun part. So you've made the gin, and beside me, I've got a couple of wonderful cocktails. But actually, before I do that, I just wanted to share that the gin that goes into the hospitals, into the cocktails, sorry, not the hospital, the gin that goes into the cocktails and makes you feel good, so hopefully you don't have to go to any hospital. The Spirit of the Month review said, if humankind were as subtle, smooth and balanced as this gin, the world would be a much finer place. Now, isn't that the most extraordinary review? So that is the gin that I'm drinking in this glass. And I think I'm choosing to drink something which is very good, perhaps a little less. And one of the lessons, or perhaps we might draw from the past few months, might be that less is more, and it's focusing on what we actually choose to drink and have. London dry gin has been in this country since the 1700s, and part of British culture and style. To start with, it was, drunk within the taverns of London, and then it, particularly in the 1920s and 30s, it was really part of the cocktail life in New York and London, and it led to so many extraordinary, wonderful cocktails in all the London hotels, from the Hanky Panky in the Savoy Hotel, I think it was, and the Ritz Bar. And I've chosen two drinks to share with you today, just the gin and tonic. And this is a nod to Viking. So it's the ocean breeze. Isn't it fun? So when you next go sailing on Viking cruises, I hope you will try an ocean breeze. And if you can't yet go sailing, I haven't yet booked your holiday, drink an ocean breeze before you book it, and then you'll book it more quickly anyway. So it's got in it gin. I haven't quite got the quantities in my head, so basically quite a lot of gin is always a good start. A little bit of apricot brandy, or it'll be quite strong. Lemon juice for balance, grenadine, and then just top it up with soda water and quite a lot of mint in the top. So I'm not quite sure how strong this one is. But it's Friday evening, and I think it's going to go down really well. So I wanted to go on to questions. I hope you've enjoyed our little journey into gin and the history, and how something very good has come out of the most amazing friendship across an ocean between our American partners and here, Highclere Castle. And I know so many people in America love Downton Abbey, and it's also Highclere Castle. So it's again stretching the hand across an ocean to enjoy the very best. So I hope you'll try the Highclere Castle gin, and I know Viking kindly stock it, and I have loved the journey and the creation of a drink I've learned so much as ever. Now, Kat, you've got some questions, I think, haven't you?
Yes, so our first question is from Juanita, who is in Richfield. She's asking, can your gin be purchased online and sent to the United States?
Juanita, you can buy the gin in America. I'm actually an American company, and we've set ourselves up in America, so you certainly can. It's just Highclere Castle Spirits website will tell you which states you can buy it in. It's also available online, and I think we've got a deal with caskers, and in this country I know you can buy it on Amazon, but I think it works slightly differently in America and Canada in how spirits are sold. That is the expertise of our American partners.
We now have Jackie, who is in Lancaster. She's asking, are there any fruit-bearing trees at Highclere Castle?
There are many fruit-bearing trees, Jackie. Thank you for the question. From pears and apples, plums, green gages, figs. The figs are looking very good, and I think we're due for some more hot weather at the end of next week, so I'm so excited. I walked past there's a L-shaped brick wall where the best fig tree is, and it kind of absorbs the heat from the wall and reflects back. And the figs on that look particularly good, and I love eating figs from the tree, roasted figs, fig salad, and then I end up making fig chutney and fig jam. So yes, I try to use what we have. It's and at the moment I'm picking green gages, and that takes such a long time to pull the ends off. So we're eating a lot of green gages. I know it's a berry, not a fruit tree, but it's a shrub. They're still delicious.
And I know we're really looking forward to welcoming guests again to tour around the gardens. So we've got Mary from Lake Oswego. I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. She's asking, my clients have tickets to visit Highclere Castle on September the 6th. Is this still possible?
Oh, Mary, we're going to open in early July. We've got 2 small special guided tours on the 7th and the 9th. And then we're opening from the 12th of July onwards, and we're opening longer into the autumn. And we've then devised some lovely tours in the autumn. One is called Real Lives and Film Sets, which is special guided tours really focusing on the particular topic as set out in the title. And the other one is about castle tours and garden trails, where I'm really looking a little bit more at the outside, the gardens and the trees, and there's quite a fun trail going through all the gardens. So whatever you're looking to do, I hope there'll be something to interest people at Highclere through the summer in September, when I hope you're coming, or in the autumn.
Moving back to gin, we now have a question from Mary in Texas. She is asking, where is the distillery?
Mary in Texas, thank you for the question. The distillery is outside Birmingham, which is about an hour and a half north of here. It's called Langley, and it's an old family distillery. I mean, the one thing you need in a distillery is good water, so that's been there for a long time. And again, we're working with their expertise at some of the oldest stills in the country. It's quite fun.
And linking to this, we've got Steve in Chicago asking, are the botanicals grown on the estate?
Steve, thank you for the question about the botanicals. We can't grow all the botanicals here. Cardamom we can't grow. Where we can grow something and harvest it and send it to the distillery, we do. The oranges and the lemons we do. We dry, actually. We take them and we then dry them in a bedroom. We have a little drying machine which we plug in because it's normally out of the way. But and then it's amazing, it intensifies the flavour so much. So it's a mixture.
We now have David in Fife is asking, how long did it take to come up with the final gin product?
David, thank you for the question from Fife, which I obviously know well because I went to St Andrews University in Fife in Scotland, so I loved my time there. It was a bit of heaven just above Edinburgh. In terms of developing the gin, it was actually a 4-year project, and the tasting took 9 months before we were entirely happy. And the little bottles of unlabeled spirit were coming from here and going to our collaborators in America and back again. And by the end, everyone was getting quite impatient.
We've also got a lot of questions about cocktails. So we've got Pammy from Florida asking, what is your favourite cocktail, and also what is Lord Carnarvon's favourite?
Oh, Pammy, thank you for that question. And funny enough, my husband was in Florida at a car rally, and I'm not quite sure, tasting cocktails and creating cocktails, I'm not quite sure what his favourite, I mean, he likes a Negroni. Sometimes, I don't know, he might try a martini. I think we all just like, I've got a gin, I quite like a gin mojito at the moment. There are so many different cocktails. To be honest, we've had a virtual cocktail party for the last couple of months. And during each cocktail party, we've created different cocktails. And I've enjoyed the journey of trying them all. The Hanky Panky was delicious. And I think at the last cocktail party, there was another one which I couldn't put down. So I've had so many cocktails, I think I've forgotten what they were.
We obviously have a Highclere Castle Gin fan here. We've got Paul from Guildford who is asking, why is the Highclere Castle Gin so smooth?
Thank you, Paul. I think the answer that the gin is so smooth is because of my husband's idea of putting the oats in. It did make a huge difference. It just smoothed off the last bit of taste at the end. And we were trying to develop something which was really good, not something we were putting our name on. We wanted to create a really fine gin, one with style and glamour, which you could drink and remember what it is to have parties and fun and laughter. So I hope you're all doing that at home.
And you've touched upon this already. We've got Jemima in Kent, who obviously has booked a Viking cruise and is asking, is the Highclere Castle Gin served on board?
I very much hope you can buy the gin on board Viking. They have been such supporters from the start, and they have bought a lot of gin. So I hope you will try many different cocktails, and it'd be quite fun to create some Highclere Castle cocktail recipes and for Viking, and propose them for your travels in different areas of the world. We could perhaps tailor them to all your different adventures and all the sights that you're seeing. It'd be wonderful, actually.
And touching upon cocktails again, we've got Donald in Washington is asking about creating a cocktail book. He's asking, is that something that we're looking to do?
Oh, Donald, we've got a small Highclere Castle cocktail book already, and I'd love to do a proper book about Highclere Castle cocktails. I'm so sorry. I'm being heckled from behind the camera, but I would really like to put together some of the cocktails that have been drunk here in the 1920s and the 1930s. We've actually found some handwritten cocktails from the butler of the time. It was so exciting, which was incredibly useful. And without doubt, Geordie's ancestors threw parties in style.
And finally, I think we've got a couple of people who are jumping on to our talk today. So we've got lots of questions asking about where you can buy the gin in the USA, if you can buy the gin in the USA, from people like Roger from Fort Collins, and where you can buy it in the UK as well.
Oh, golly, well, thank you. Now, I hope you now all want to drink it and make a few cocktails. So I had better post some cocktail recipes, and I'll try and liaise with Viking Cruises So To Do. The Ocean Breeze is one, and some of perhaps my favourite and my husband's favourite. I can't choose, it's going to be 2 or 3 of them. In the UK, you can buy it on Amazon and in Waitrose or from our shop. And in the USA, go on Highclere Castle Spirits. It'll show you what states we've got it into, and we'd hope to revisit some of those states and again support the local shops and meet you. And I hope you'll try the gin.
A final question about the cocktails once more. We've got Bobby from New York who's asking, where can I find the cocktail recipes?
We've got a bit ahead of ourselves in terms of making the cocktails for Viking Cruises and leapt in there. So I'm going to give the cocktail recipes to Viking Cruises, and they'll be able to post it on Viking.TV. And I hope we've got some very pretty photographs to go alongside with them. Next week is such a contrast. So from the style and glamour of Highclere Castle Gin, I'm going to be outside and beginning in a muddy field with one of my favourite British lop-eared pigs called Lady Mary. So I had 3 gilts, girl pigs. They were called Lady Mary, Lady Edith and Lady Sybil. And I have still got Lady Mary and Lady Sybil. Lady Edith went off to find TV fame with a man called Adam Henson, who does Countryfile, which is a big TV programme in this country. So they're all doing very well, and they've had lots of piglets. So I'm going to start with the pigs down on the farm, and from there move to the hilltops and some conservation, and then back inside again. So thank you so much for joining me for Highclere Castle Gin, for the Orangery, for the Botanicals, and for this evening for Fridays at home at Highclere for Viking TV. Thank you.